he could rail. I mean, he could just light up. I mean, his whole body punctuated what he was saying.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at the most manipulative, controlling, and violent cult leaders in history.
Boy, is this guy crazy. Is this a cult if I ever heard one? Yes, it is. It's a cult. I mean, it's the cult of cults.
Bhagwan Shri Rajnish, Rajnish Puram.
Do you consider yourself a god?
My God. There is no God.
By masking his true intentions with progressive ideas, Rajnish amassed a sizable following. His teachings led him to be branded as a sex guru in his home country of India. His large following in the West resulted in him eventually relocating to the United States, where his true nature surfaced.
I will go on trying to help people to be awake. The awakened man will be the new man.
His acolytes lived in poverty, while he led a luxurious lifestyle. Those in his inner circle tried to expand his political power through drastic means, including the first bioterrorist attack in the country and the attempted assassination of a government official.
We want everyone to know that if you're going to use violence, that we will be ready to take whatever actions needed to protect ourselves.
When he was eventually deported, an additional 21 countries refused him entry as well. Warren Jeffs, the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
I have been the most wicked man.
As the leader of this sect that believes in multiple marriages, Warren Jeffs viewed women as objects, even counting several of his late father's wives among his 78 spouses.
We went to a Monday morning meeting, and Warren was there with his father's wives. And he says, "Look at what the Lord has blessed me with."
Those that refused were either forbidden from being wed again or had to flee the compound entirely. He used his position as leader to arrange several marriages, often between underage individuals and adults. His mistreatment against minors escalated, landing him a spot on the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitive list. Although he's behind bars now, he's still revered within the church, underscoring how successful his coercion had been.
I think that he was keenly aware of how to pick up on what is important to people and how to use that to manipulate them.
Joseph Dimambro and Luc Jouret, Order of the Solar Temple. For some, running a cult is a collaborative effort, and both these men played a significant role within the Order of the Solar Temple.
Both leaders, Dimambro and Jouret, were skilled manipulators who understood their followers' craving for spiritual secrets.
Their organization utilized religious trappings, with Dimambro even claiming that his daughter would produce the next Messiah. He even had another infant killed after believing he was the Antichrist.
A curious mix of the Christian and the occult, the order's beliefs were jealously guarded. Only the inner circle were allowed to know the central doctrines.
When the tide started to turn against them, they took things to the final stage. In 1994, dozens of members were discovered dead in Switzerland, including Jouret and Dimambro themselves. Their impact didn't end there. In the following years, several more people ended their lives after believing their teachings.
There has never been such a series of deaths. 4 separate incidents over a period of 15 months.
Shoko Asahara, Om Shinrikyo. It's hard to believe that such a vicious organization started out as a simple yoga class.
A lot of the people involved in it, they were young, well-educated, technologically advanced.
Shoko Asahara eventually accrued a large base, and his lessons focused on both self-improvement and faith, allowing him to cast a wide net. However, his intentions were anything but pure. His followers went through initiation rituals involving drugs or extreme physical discomfort. He also had a goal of overtaking the government, which led to him coordinating a disastrous attack on the Tokyo metro that resulted in over a dozen deaths.
This is the deadliest terror attack carried out on Japanese soil and remains the only sophisticated chemical warfare attack by a terrorist group.
His thirst for power was unquenched, leading to several other violent incidents. But his hubris eventually led to his downfall, with his trial considered one of the most significant in Japan's history.
After Tokyo, Japan rounded up armed members and put them on trial. 13 got the death penalty, including Shoko Asahara, the would-be Messiah himself.
Paul and T McKenzie, Good News International Church. It's terrifying to think about how much abuse occurs without people knowing.
Police searched Mackenzie's compound in Malindi and found 43 children living there without attending school. That's according to court documents at the time. Mackenzie's brother says the cult leader believed education was evil.
There's no better example of this than the actions of the Good News International Church, the corrupt methods of which went on for decades before being discovered in 2023. Its leader, Paul and T McKenzie, used people's fear of the end times to control them, while also demonizing the West. Everything from medicine to food was considered a tool of Satan.
My wife told me she'd found a church that would take her to heaven. She said it was wrong to go to school and hospital.
This led to his ultimate act of cruelty, a mass starvation event that he exempted himself from. He instructed followers to fast, saying it would allow them to meet Jesus. This led to the deaths of over 100 people.
Sources say he told his adherents the world was going to end on April 15 and Satan would rule for 1,000 years.
Rock Terrio, the Anthill Kids.
Rock had this amazing ability when you were talking to him that he seemed to focus all of his attention on you, and you felt this powerful presence.
For some, evil runs to the very core. The torture that Rock Terrio inflicted upon members of the Anthill Kids is enough to horrify even the bravest people. His savagery knew no bounds, with some members being forced to break their own limbs with hammers. They were also forced to hurt each other to prove their loyalty to Terrio.
He took a knife and stabbed through the hand, basically sort of crucified her hand to the table.
Some members also underwent extreme medical experiments, allowing him to perform surgeries on them, ultimately cutting some of their lives short. His terrible actions ultimately led to him being sentenced to life in prison, where he deservedly spent the rest of his days.
For 2 brutal operations, which he was entirely unqualified to perform, the homeopathic guru who called himself Moses found himself behind bars.
David Koresh, Branch Davidians.
David was our Christ, giving us the truths from God.
His impact both pre- and post-mortem has been disastrous. Starting out as a member of the Branch Davidians, Koresh used his influence among other members to secure authority in the late 1980s. He had warped ideas surrounding women and took several wives, with some allegedly being underage. Rampant child abuse allegations and growing weapons collections raised several red flags among officials.
You have guns?
Yeah, we have some. It makes nobody's business whether we have a gun or not at this place. Guns are the right of Americans to have.
Eventually, the tensions between him and the government mounted, culminating in the controversial Waco siege.
They came on the property with 2 cattle trailers and got out. They started shooting.
Well, it definitely was not us that shot first, because I remember the first rounds I heard were the M60 and the 50 caliber. We didn't have any of those weapons.
While he ended up dying, his influence unfortunately lingered. Timothy McVeigh, the perpetrator behind the Oklahoma City bombing, was so angered by the events that he planned his own horrific revenge, which ended up taking place on the anniversary of Koresh's death. Marshall Applewhite, Heaven's Gate.
Boy, is this guy crazy. Is this a cult if I ever heard one? Yes, it is. It's a cult. I mean, it's the cult of cults.
Not every cult leader needed to resort to aggression to get their way. While Marshall Applewhite didn't use sex or violence as a means of control, that doesn't make his actions any less insidious. He insisted that he was one of the witnesses referenced in the Bible, and preached that he and anyone who followed him would reach salvation via a spaceship on the Hale-Bopp comet.
See, it says Heaven's Gate awaiting. We've been away and now we're going back.
He forced people to look and dress the same, along with giving up everything that made them individuals, including their families and sexualities. He was able to manipulate them into believing that self-elimination was the only way to ascend, leading to a now infamous mass death event that's still referenced in pop culture today.
If we even turned out to not be what we were, they are 10 times what they have ever been, and they know.
Charles Manson, the Manson family.
The rantings of a madman. Charles Manson in full flight.
Fault makes strong, good pain, understand pain. Not bad. Pain's not bad, it's good.
The symbol of the dark side of the 1960s, Manson cultivated a dangerously loyal following. Taking advantage of the hippie movement, he somehow appealed to a number of young people. He believed a race war was imminent, and that it would result in himself being made the master of a new world.
I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. You do exactly what I say.
Manson planned several appalling events that he believed would ignite this war. The most notorious by far was the slaying of Sharon Tate and several others, whose status turned the crime into a media spectacle. By the time the Manson family was caught, they had taken 9 victims and were suspected of a dozen more killings. Manson was swiftly re-imprisoned, where he rightfully spent the rest of his days.
The Manson family killing spree is a crime that will most likely continue to confound and horrify for the next 50 years.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Jim Jones, People's Temple of the Disciples of Christ. With his seemingly endless charm and confidence, he became the archetypal cult leader.
He could rail. I mean, he could just light up. I mean, his whole body punctuated what he was saying.
He attracted a following, many of whom believed he possessed healing powers. After officials began investigating him, he moved his base of operations to Guyana. There, they were subjected to harsh living conditions, including a lack of food and various forms of abuse. When Jonestown was eventually investigated by a U.S. representative, Jones had him murdered. He then ordered a large-scale death event, with over 900 people being forced to drink a poisoned beverage, while he secured a quick exit by gunshot.
He is the mass murderer. And you asked me before what I felt about Jim Jones. I think he's a monster.
Which cult leader do you think had the most horrific methods and impact? Let us know in the comments below.
The mind that you had as a human is aborted, and the soul that was given to you is filled with next level information, next level mind, and a new creature is born.